The NFL draft is near. So, what will Indy do to bolster Lou Anarumo's defense? Could there be a surprise pick in order? And which players do you, the fans, want to see added to the stop troops? Well, let's talk about it. Welcome to the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast, as always, presented by Indianapolis Colts on SI.com. My name is Drake Wally, deputy editor for the site and co-host of the show. And then, of course, I am joined by the one and only Noah Gebert, fellow analyst on the site and also co-host of the show. Noah, we are so close. Next Thursday is the big day when we're going to be live streaming that first round. We talked about offense last week. Obviously, it's huge. You got to be able to help Richardson and blase with the offensive line, tight end this, and Shane Steichen that. But this is really where I think you're going to see. I think you're going to see more defensive selections in the NFL draft than you will offensive selections. You got to help a new coordinator like Lou Anarumo. So how you doing, man? What are your thoughts on the defensive needs and how do you feel about the draft being less than 2 weeks away?
Yeah, finally, it's happening. Yeah, I think defense is going to be fun to talk about tonight as opposed to offense. I feel like on the defensive side of the ball, literally every position that you can go down, you're like, could use some help there, could use some help there. Both spots along the defensive front. You could add a starting linebacker or some depth linebackers. First round corner wouldn't even be out of the question. Anywhere in the safety room, I think you've got room to add. So pretty much every round and every position, I feel like everything's kind of up in the air and a possibility. So that makes it super exciting to talk about as opposed to offense where you're like, well, they're obviously not going quarterback super early. They're not going wide receiver super early. There's a little bit more telltale signs. And then you have, like you mentioned, the addition of Lou Anarumo. The offense kind of staying put in terms of the coaching staff and the personnel has really not been overhauled too much, but you've already seen some indications of the Colts trying to overhaul the defensive side of the ball with the additions of Charvarius Ward, Cam Bynum, Neville Gallimore, departures of a starter like EJ Speed. So you know changes coming there, and I bet that we're not done seeing changes on the defense.
Yeah, and it's much needed. I mean, you're coming off of a season where the defense was so wishy-washy and they would play teams that are really below their level, and the teams would just dice them up, especially in the passing game. And then you would see sometimes the ground attack would work, but man, I know that it's been repeated, but I just cannot get it out of my head. Drake May, rookie, not a very good football team. And, he diced up the Colts. And then, of course, Drew Lock did it before he goes back to Seattle. So, this is a big draft. So before we get to anything, we do have to jump into the chat here. Here we go. Time to huddle up. Thank you so much, Matt, for joining. Sean Conkright, as always. Hey, guys. Tony Pelletieri, what's up? I'll tell you what's up is the NFL draft, Tony. We are so close. I'm excited for it. We still have a couple more shows before we get to it. We might have a wild picks episode followed by one last mock draft post free agency because it was way different before Ward and Bynum and company were signed. But yeah, greetings to all you beautiful people. Thank you so much, DSG. So without further ado, we're just going to dive into it. And what we're going to do is exactly what we did last episode, only we're just going to flip flop it to the defensive side of the ball. So we've got defensive tackle, we've got edge, we've got linebacker, we've got cornerback, and we've got safety. Now, each one of us has somebody here that we would like to talk about. Last time, I believe we started off with Noah, so this time we'll go ahead and throw mine in here. And, of course, we're going to start with the interior, the defensive tackle. This is so freaking important. Don't necessarily expect the Colts to – heck, they might. Ballard loves himself some trench work. He's obsessed with the trenches. But you got to go back to DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart. Obviously, they're your starters, but they are on the wrong side, which is just even a year over of 30. Okay, so they're on the wrong side of 30, but they really are still in their prime. So tell me a little bit about the defensive tackle room. I know that they added Neville Gallimore, but you're talking about a pass rusher who really is not a run defending specialist.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the big area of concern where you had Taven Bryan last year kind of fill in that role and kind of being that straight backup to Grover Stewart and playing in that one tech position more than he should have. I'm kind of worried that just because of how the defensive line is shaping out and that defensive tackle room is, that Neville Gallimore is going to be put in a similar situation unless the Colts add some reinforcements to really kind of shift some things around and get some more bodies in there because Get guys like Adetomiwa Adebawore, Feldarius Payne aren't going to be guys that are going to be manning that nose tackle spot anytime. So you've got no backup to Grover Stewart at this point. And beyond that, yeah, you just mentioned Neville Gallimore. Yeah, has kind of been a role player his whole career, and then you've got two guys in Grover Stewart and DeForest Buckner, who for the longest time have just been this great tandem you've had in the defensive tackle room that you haven't had to worry about and really haven't had to mess with. But now you're starting to face reality a little bit. Both of them are 31 years old this season, 2 years left on the deal. I think there's some good outs if you need to get out of those contracts. So I wouldn't say that they're secure by any means contractually with the Colts, even though they're under contract for the next 2 years. So yeah, you're really kind of up in the. I mean, you need depth. You could get somebody who could push for a starting role in the next year or two, also. So you have tons of room to add everywhere.
Yeah, and real quick before we even dive into this, you have different. I don't think that they're going to spend a super high draft pick on a defensive tackle, but again, if there was a time where you're like, we should get ahead and try to groom the next guy, behind Stewart or behind Buckner, maybe this is when you do it.
Yeah.
Maybe this is when you do it. There's some solid football players, but I'm going to go ahead and dive into mine here. So this is a one of my favorites. Just one of my favorites. I think that he's probably going to be more of a maybe a late day 2, early day 3 type guy. I've even seen his projection by NFL Draft Buzz as far as 6th round. I simply do not think that a defensive tackle as ridiculously athletic as this gentleman is going to fall that far. And Stats Matt, you are going to be so proud. It's CJ West from Indiana. That's my alma mater, even though it was IU Kokomo, so I guess it's kind of IU. Degree says so, but yes, this was one of the enforcers on Kurt Cignetti's defensive line. Absolute unit of a human being, and I'm just going to run down his statistics from IU because he didn't really miss a beat at Kent State. He played there for 4 seasons in the MAC. Of course, you're thinking when he goes to IU, you're like, is he going to be able to handle the Big Ten? No problem for this guy. 13 games, 40 total tackles, the same as he had in 2023 at Kent State. He had 8 for loss. That's a career high. He had 2 sacks. He deflected a pass. He forced a fumble. The thing that really stands out about CJ West as well is he ran a 4.95 40-yard dash, a 2.87 second 20-yard split. He weighs 318 pounds. I mean, he had a 33-inch vertical jump. I mean, the dude is huge. He's more of a bowling ball because he's about 6 foot. But this is a guy that, based off of because you're going to hear a lot of me talking about the Indy Draft Guide. I've got that pulled up here. So just briefly, some of his strengths, he's a dynamic athlete who gets off the ball with juice. He can also get into the offensive lineman's chest and drive them backwards into the quarterback's space. That's because he's a shorter guy. He's able to really, really punch right into the chest. Some of the weaknesses, though, is he is not the best run defender at times. Sometimes he falls through the cracks, whether it's overrunning or it's getting out of his gap. He's got to work on that. And then, of course, his consistency finishing plays. But the way that he fits, he's got the athleticism, speed, and explosiveness. So I think that this is a very good fit. I think that you could get him in later rounds. What are your thoughts here? I think the only downside to CJ West is kind of what I mentioned and what the Indy Draft Guide mentioned, and that's that you might not be getting the best run defender, which kind of sounds like you need that more than not.
Yeah. The only thing that worries me about CJ West, obviously super fun player to watch. It's super when you're drafting somebody rounds 4, 5, 6, wherever he ends up going. If you're just getting some juice on the interior and to add some of the pass rush, you're never going to be upset at getting some more bodies that are capable of applying pressure to the quarterback from the interior in those ranges. But yeah, you're looking at guys that are similar on the roster, and Neville Gallimore, Adetomiwa Adebawore, guys with those kind of profiles who have been more pass rush specialists than they have been run defense specialists. So you're still kind of leaving that gap or that hole in your roster where you don't have that person directly behind Grover Stewart, and you end up shoehorning somebody like Neville Gallimore into that position. I think there's still time to add to that backup right behind Grover Stewart. I think you could go out and get a veteran body that can hold their own back there, and you don't need to necessarily use the draft to fill that goal or fill that hole. But Yeah, CJ West wouldn't necessarily do that in that sense, but yeah, I mean, he fits a profile kind of like Adetomiwa Adebawore, where Adebawore was a freak athlete with that super high RAS score. CJ West isn't quite the athlete that Adetomiwa Adebawore is, but he is in that kind of mold of being more of a pressure kind of guy, and he'll beat you with his athleticism and not so much his strength.
Yeah, and really at the end of the day, I think that this would be a player that you might draft if you were confident that you had another run defender.
Mhm.
Maybe you pick one up in free agency because people don't forget free agency lasts months and months and months. It's long, and it's not necessarily the sexiest signings after the first couple waves. But the Colts could still get themselves a
Mhm.
veteran gap plugger. It's really not that hard to find one. So that's mine. I love CJ West. I think that it makes a lot of sense. I do still think that you need probably some kind of run defender. But we're going to go ahead and get to Noah's here. I did have Patrick's comment pulled up there. So Noah's is I've taken a look at this one and I actually like it because it's a little bit more of a higher pedigree. The
Mhm.
dude is the opposite of CJ West. He's just tall. He's huge. He's even bigger. And that's Derek Harmon from Oregon. So Noah, give us a little bit of insight on why you selected Derek Harmon and what you think he could bring to the Colts.
Yeah, I think Derek Harmon is kind of this dark horse guy that you might see the Colts selecting at 14. I know a lot of people think that might be a little bit too rich for him, but in a draft where you're struggling to find trade partners and somebody that might want to come up to your pick, you might be put in a situation where everyone thinks Colts are picking Tyler Warren. Tyler Warren's gone, then you have to make a decision at some point. And if you don't have anyone to trade with, you're just going to have to pull the trigger on somebody that you like. And I think Derek Harmon very much could be in that mold. The one thing that I have working against Derek Harmon is just we've put that emphasis on this being a win now or a turn things around, get wins quickly, get immediate contributors on your team. And I think Derek Harmon can be that, but maybe not so much because he will have to split that time and not be a full-time starter behind Grover Stewart and DeForest Buckner. I think Derek Harmon can be more like what we talked about is that run stopper up the middle who can back up Grover Stewart. And I think he can back up DeForest Buckner. I don't think he's going to be limited. I think he's versatile in that sense where he could fill in for either one of those guys when they're off the field. And I think he can do an adequate job. I think he's definitely going to provide less of a pass rush presence, kind of the opposite of how we mentioned with CJ West, where primarily he's going to be in there on the early downs to stop the run and to spell guys like DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart. And yeah, but I mean, yeah, long term, I think he has the potential to be a 3-down player on the defensive side of the ball, on the defensive interior. It's just that the Colts don't necessarily need that guy right now. So maybe that works against him when it comes time for the Colts to select.
All he did at Michigan State and before he went over to Oregon was just continue to improve. All he did was continue to stack his stats. He didn't leave the Big Ten, but he did have 45 tackles, 11 tackles for loss, 5 sacks, 4 passes defended, 2 fumble recoveries, 2 fumbles forced. Every single one of those are career
Mhm.
highs. So Derek Harmon is legit. He's absolutely legit. And I will run through super fast because we're already almost at 15 minutes, which is how it always goes. But this is how he fits per the Indy Draft Guide. Harmon would be a perfect addition to the interior of the defensive line for now and the future. He has the size and skills as a pass rusher and run defender to play both defensive tackle spots, providing quality depth behind Buckner and Stewart. Harmon also, just like Noah said, projects to be a starter down the line and can succeed either Buckner or Stewart in a few years. Whether it is on day 1 or 2, Harmon would be a selection
Mhm.
that, quote, draws rave reviews. So, I mean, this is, I think, the kind of prospect where the Colts would say, you know what? Let's go ahead and take him at 14. I know that's like me and Noah said that kind of sounds crazy, but if you can think down the line that you can replace one of those two guys, it's really hard to say no. It's really hard to say no. We'll see who's there at 14 or if the Colts trade up, get Warren, whatever, but absolutely love that pick. And I know that a lot of the chat absolutely loves that too. So the next one we're going to get to is really interesting. Dio Dangbo's gone,
Mhm.
edge defender. Okay. Right now, we got Leatu Latu, Samson Ebukam, Kwity Paye, Tyquan Lewis, and Isaiah Land. Of course, you can't forget about Isaiah Land. But those are really the first 4 guys, maybe even the first 3 are really the meat and potatoes of this thing. What are your thoughts on the current state of the edge room? And do you think that losing Dio was that big of a punch, to the gut, because he did lead the team in pressures, and he didn't come up with all the sack numbers, but man, he was an absolute force, power off the side.
Yeah, I think the subtraction of Dio could be bigger than some people think.
Oh yeah.
The pressure numbers are huge, but you kind of hope that you get that production from Samson Ebukam, who you didn't have available last year. But yeah, with that Achilles injury and his age, you never know. I think the biggest thing that you're losing with Dio Adengbo is that guy who can play inside out. Right now, they just have Tyquan Lewis who can kind of bump in there and play on the interior on passing downs, and the Colts have loved those guys in the past. So I wouldn't be surprised if they were kind of targeting something like that. Yeah, and then we've talked about this before, how just the state of the edge room beyond this season is just, there's so much up in the balance, right? That Kwity Paye's on a contract year, Samson Ebukam on a contract year, Tyquan Lewis on a contract year, Laiatu Latu is really the only one that's under contract beyond this season. So you've got to figure out something maybe to replace that production of Dio Adengbo in the immediate term, but also to kind of solidify what you're going to be doing at that position in the future.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like Pat. I gotta highlight this real quick. You saw how, we saw how effective a stellar D line was in the Super Bowl. Can't discount getting the best guys you can get for that. Look, that's huge. I mean, absolutely. When you can get to the quarterback, pressure the quarterback, force the quarterback to make bad throws, it's really over in a lot of ways. So we'll go ahead and jump into Noah's first. So this one is a name that has been floated around a lot. Texas A&M Aggie, the one and only Shamar Stewart. So go ahead and dive into this one, Noah. I know that you've mentioned him multiple times when we've talked about the draft on this show.
Yeah, and it just kind of fits just because the freak athlete situation that you get with him, and how Chris Ballard has kind of leaned towards those kind of guys. 6'6", 275. He's definitely one of those guys that's going to be a guy that can bump inside when you're facing on third down. You can bump him inside, not push him on the edge all too often. Really terrible production in college in terms of the sack numbers and the pressure numbers. But just kind of taking a look at that defense, sometimes college defenses are weird, and sometimes you get players who are really good at rushing the passer that just don't get to rush the passer as often as they should. And I think that was kind of the situation with Shamar Stewart. Where it was, it was technically a pass rush rep, as it will be recorded by PFF and other metric sites, but his main priority is more of a containment or to man up somebody to free up a stunt on the outside. So I think that Shamar Stewart could be in more advantageous positions in an NFL defense if they play him on the edge more full time.
Yeah, and this is something that's pretty interesting. So strengths, he's a massive edge rusher who has barely tapped into his potential. He also had a 10.00 RAS score. Dude's just a freak. He's a freak. That's the kind of guy that Ballard is probably over there just salivating over. So don't be surprised if they already are intrigued by him. He has a violent set of shedding skills to get free of blocks and the speed to close on the ball. Some of his weaknesses is that he has almost no career sack production, creating a bit of a mystery given his athletic profile, and he needs to bring more violence with his hand strikes and not just the block shedding and not just his block shedding rather than relying on brute strength once engaged. But here's the thing. How does he fit? Love this paragraph. The Colts have a history of taking pass rushers like Stewart under Chris Ballard. While the production does not match the traits, the Colts typically bet on the traits and believe they can get the production out of the player. Stewart will likely be gone by the time the Colts pick in the first round, but if he falls like Laiatu Latu did last year, Stewart will certainly be in the conversation for Indy. So that is huge. But just to kind of rehash his college numbers, he had 4.5 sacks all 3 seasons. Okay, 65 tackles, 12 for loss, which is about 1 out of every 5 tackles. About 1 out of every 5 tackles, you're still getting a tackle for loss, 4 passes defended. So if you watch his tape, though, when he does make plays, he is a lightning rod. The dude is quick as hell. And when you're coming off the edge like that, if you lose a guy like that, it spells chaos for your backfield. So that is a very interesting one. I know that Stats Matt here, he says, I'm Lease, no Stewart. We've done this with high RAS, no production, and they're not on the team anymore. We'll have to see, Stats, because every one of these guys is different that fits that profile. I know that the history has lent, some unfortunate results, but I do think that Shamar Stewart has got the pedigree. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd be interested just to kind of see what this means for the Colts. They kind of shifted their philosophy last year with the selection of Laiatu Latu, somebody who's athletic enough for sure, but not like up to the standards that had been previously set or kind of demonstrated by the selections that Ballard's made in the past. And I think this would be more of a return to Ballard's true form of selecting those high athletic upside guys and not really leaning on the production. So yeah, I'm just kind of curious to see if Latu was a turn of the page in terms of how Ballard is trying to go about his drafting and his draft strategy, or if we see somebody like Shamar Stewart come back.
Well, and you know what? At the end of the day, I mean, like you said, with Leatu Latu, it was more technicality. It was more day one ready to start. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see. But one of mine, this one might be a little bit controversial. I think me and Noah, both of our edge rushers here. Some people have been like, well, they're not exactly a fit. They're kind of raw, or they're just athletes, or they're fast, or this or that. But mine's James Pierce Jr. So not much of a run defender. Okay, he's going to be far, far more of a situational pass rush type guy. He did have a 9.40 RAS score. He looks like this is from the Indy Draft Guide. It looks like he was built in a lab to be a speed rusher in the NFL. He has a very effective speed to power counter with a bull rush or inside stick move and power through the inside shoulder. And as a run defender, he does show the ability to chase down plays from behind. Behind is the key word there, in the blink of an eye. If blockers overextend to get on him quickly, he has the lateral movement to slip by him. But here's the weakness, and this is the big one, is that he's pretty thin and may not have much more room for added mass. And that's just because he's already 6'5". All right, he's just a big, lanky dude. But on the surface, he looks like a strong fit for the Colts, but he does offer little as a run defender. So this is a guy that put up actually the numbers at Tennessee. He had 10 sacks in 2023. He had 7.5 in 2024. He had 28 total tackles for loss in those two seasons, 15 and then 13. I mean, hell, the guy had an interception for 52-yard return and a touchdown. So this is a guy that can get the job done, but I'm picking him because the Colts needed more pressure. Mm-hmm. They just needed more pressure. They didn't get it from Kwity Paye. They didn't get as much, I think, as they had anticipated from Leatu Latu. I think the dude still finished second on the team behind Dio Dangbo. So you need more pressure on the quarterback. You can still get a run-defending defensive end. I think James Pierce Jr. would be a good fit. What are your thoughts on him? He is a little bit small as far as like his mass.
Yeah, he's lean. He's a lean guy for sure. And he's gonna beat you with his athleticism. He's very much kind of in that opposite mold of Shamar Stewart. I mean, where they're both athletic freaks, but Shamar Stewart's going to be that guy that can bump inside on third down. James Pierce is going to be purely only used on third down to rush on the edge, at least early on in his career. So it kind of depends on what school of thought you're going for and what you're looking for to round out the room. I would kind of lean on Shamar Stewart just because of the role that they need, somebody to be an inside out kind of guy, where they have someone like Samson Ebukam who could be that James Pierce type, who's rushing on the outside on third down. Latu could be a similar situation, who's just rushing on the outside on third down. But I mean, it's never a bad idea to add somebody who can get to the passer. And I think if you add another speed rusher on the outside, I would not be mad at that.
Yeah, and we got to address it real quick. People, don't forget, Samson Ebukam is still on the team. Mm-hmm. I know that it's hard to remember, but he actually was a force in 2023. So I think that if you get him back even 85-90% of what he was playing a couple years ago, you might have yourself, again, one of the best pressure artists off the edge. I mean, we'll have to see what Latu does in his second year, but this next position, by the way, chat, you guys are blowing up. It's awesome. It's awesome to see all these comments here. And Patrick Rye did mention that he did still have an 84.1 run grade. That's fair. It's just when you get to the NFL and you deal with these tackles that are just freaking huge, and they're far more superior just in experience and dealing with guys like James Pierce, it's a little bit different, but we'll have to see. I'm hoping, honestly, if the Colts do select him, that he can make that transition, because he could be a really nasty third down rusher. And if he increases that run defense prowess, maybe he plays more snaps. But this one is huge because the Colts did lose EJ Speed. Now you've got Zaire Franklin, you've got Jalen Carlisle, and you also lost Grant Stewart. I know he wasn't a starter, but he was a depth guy nonetheless. So linebacker, this one's a huge position. I have my guy. Now, the thing is, what's really awesome is me and Noah picked guys from the exact same
Mhm.
school, which just tells you how good this school's linebacking core is. So I'll go ahead and start with mine. Possibly one of my favorite potential picks for the Colts, and that's Carson Schlesinger. Um, Everything. That's the word that comes to mind when I think of Carson Schlesinger. Everything. He covers. He pursues well. He tackles effectively. He doesn't need help to make tackles. He had 90 freaking solo tackles in 2024 alone. Okay, he can take away the football. He can. He has great feet. He has good intelligence. He has good communication. The only downside to him is he is a little bit smaller. But I mean, if you look at the profile here, he would be the best coverage linebacker on the Colts the minute he steps on the field. That's the Indy Draft Guide saying that. That's also with Jalen Carlisle, who was one of the best coverage linebackers in the entire NFL in his short sample size. The Colts haven't had an impact coverage linebacker since injuries took away Shaquille Leonard's career, and a player like Schlesinger has the potential to even surpass the former All-Pro in coverage. High remarks on Carson Schlesinger. What's your opinion on him? I was going to get into his statistics, but that can wait a second. I want to hear your take on him. I believe he was also an All-American.
Yeah, I like Schlesinger, and I think he very much fits the profile of guys that Ballard goes after. A team captain for UCLA, somebody else. I think he's like a lot of these rookie linebackers that are these draft prospects at linebacker that you're going to see. I think most of them pretty much fit really well at will linebacker in that exact same spot that Jalen Carlisle is currently manning according to the depth chart, but could be up for competition come training camp. So yeah, I think he'd be a really good fit in that system. I think this would be, yeah, a second round selection, trade back in the first maybe. He may not be there when you come back around in the second round, and I think that could put you in a difficult situation if you're really looking to add a full-time starter on the other side of Zaire Franklin. One thing I will say about the Colts, I do think that's just in terms of the depth chart, I think they're happy with Jalen Carlisle, and they would like
Sure.
Jalen Carlisle to be that starter, but they're not going to sit there and not add competition. So it's obviously going to be a need, not as glaring of a need as tight end is. Maybe right guard even could be a bigger need. But on the defensive side of the ball, I think this is as big of a need as it gets.
Yeah, and look, what was lacking last season was coverage. Okay, and Carlisle didn't
Mhm.
play, but I think 10 games. So when you had a run defender like EJ Speed, and I can't remember, I think it was Andrew Moore who said this once, but Zaire Franklin's more of a thumper. He's just a guy who's going to make those tackles. He's going to throw his body in there to hit a ball carrier. That's why he has so many freaking tackles, but he's not a coverage linebacker. You can't just have one coverage linebacker if you want to succeed in the NFL. Not today. So I think that this would be a really big deal. Now, I do really quickly want to hit on a couple of these weaknesses because it's very hard to find them. And we're not just saying this. I'm not just saying this because I think he's one of my favorite potential picks. I'm saying this because there are still weaknesses. He has had his struggles taking on blocks consistently. He is a little bit of an undersized linebacker. So he's not going to every single time be able to just plow through these blocks. It's going to take some time for him to get adjusted to that. He hasn't displayed the ability to consistently disengage at the point of attack with offensive linemen, and he can get displaced too easily. And then, of course, while a good tackler, he isn't the most physical at the point of attack and can lose engagements with running backs. He will have his struggles in short yardage holding the point. All of that tells me that he is a little bit undersized for a linebacker. Okay, but guess what? Jalen Carlisle was a converted safety over to linebacker, also a little bit of a lighter linebacker. Okay, Shaq Leonard, man, he was also a very thin linebacker. He was like 225 or 230. Okay, so in today's NFL, you don't have to have this big hulking Jack Lambert looking guy that's got shoulder pads that could take off like a jet. Okay, you need more nimbleness. I think that Carson Schlesinger fits, but we'll have to see. We'll have to see, man. We do have to get to the other one here. So this is another UCLA linebacker, and I'm going to pass this one on to Noah almost right away. Hell of a football player, really helped to solidify this duo of linebackers that this team had, and that's Kane Medrano. So, by the way, probably one of the coolest names that I've seen in this entire list. Give me a little bit of perspective, a little bit of a breakdown on why you picked Kane here.
Yeah, so Kane, I think he falls into a lot of categories that the Colts typically go for. I think he's a two-sport athlete in high school, is a state champion in shot and disc, and then converted safety. He came to UCLA as a safety. The Colts love drafting converted safeties there at linebacker. So I think, yeah, that position change is a big deal. I think he's a little bit on the older side in terms of draft prospects, but I think if you're looking for somebody who can contribute immediately, Kane Madrano, I think, would be more of like your round 4 kind of selection at linebacker, and not so much that late round 1, early round 2 like Schlesinger. And I think he's definitely a little bit less. He would be more of a coverage linebacker. Madrano would be, but I think a little bit less ability than Schlesinger has. But still, I mean, boasting great athleticism. He runs in the 4.4s. He was a 38-inch vert. I think it was an over a 10-foot broad jump. So I mean, just an insane athlete at the position. Super long arms, at least relative to the rest of the draft class. So I think that he just has a ton of traits that the Colts would consider. And if you're in that position when you're sitting at your draft pick at 45 and Schlesinger falls off the board, I think just looking at his UCLA teammate when you get a little bit later, maybe early in day 3, is somebody you could take a swing on.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at his numbers here. I mean, he did play 6 years in college, which is, in a way, that's impressive. It's almost like Tyler Shook.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say, so this is just run. So basically, 19 and 20 kind of washes. You kind of got to let those go. But here's just the combined tackles year by year, tackles for loss, and then the passes defended. So you've got 25 tackles, 38, 56, 72. Tackles for loss, 1, 2, 7, 11. Passes defended, 1, 1, 2, 4. And then he actually had an interception for 24-yard return back in 2022. This is a guy who's going to provide a little bit of everything, like a nice little blend of what you're looking for. And I think that picking a guy like him really makes a lot of sense now. The thing is, he's not going to be this second round, maybe not even third round, like Noah said. He might be a 4th or 5th round type selection. But hey, man, if you're looking to add double depth, I mean, I think it'd be absolutely wild if they picked Schlesinger and turned around and also picked his teammate later on. I mean, I think that honestly wouldn't even be that bad because you're double dipping at linebacker and you really only have 2 guys right now in that room that make a lot of sense. So we'll have to see. I think that one definitely is one to keep an eye on. But yeah, linebacker is just going to be an absolutely massive need for this team. So as we transition over here, now we're getting into the defensive secondary. And of course, that means we're going to jump to cornerback. Now we're going to spend some time on these because this is where the defense is really going to be interesting. Obviously, Lou Anarumo is going to put linebackers in an interesting position, defensive tackles, whatever. The guy's a chameleon. Okay, that's been hashed over and over. But where he really sets up his chess pieces is in the secondary. It's with the cornerbacks, but especially the safeties. So when we talk about this cornerback room right now, it's a lot different. You added Corey Ballantyne for depth, and then you added Charvarius Ward as your undisputed number 1. So right now, 2 outside guys are Charvarius Ward and Jalen Jones. Then to back them up, you've got pretty much Sam Womack III and Juju Brents. And then on, Corey Ballantyne's kind of, we'll see wherever he fits in. But then you've got Kenny Moore in the slot. So I hope I'm not missing anybody, but that's pretty much your setup. And so there's not as much room as there was before for the cornerback position. And maybe you're not looking as high in the draft as you were, because remember, when we did our first mock draft, I think we went Will Johnson in the first round. I think we double dipped at cornerback. So what are your thoughts on the state of this position for the Colts? And what do you think that they're going to need in the draft? Do you think that it's going to be high round talent?
Yeah, so the addition of Charvarius Ward completely transformed that room.
Everything. Yeah.
Just kind of bumped everybody down to a spot on the depth chart where you're a little bit more comfortable, where you're not having Juju Brents or Sam Womack as people you're relying on to be full-time starters. Somebody that could compete for a starting job but not be outright unquestioned the starter like they had to be this past season. I think you're still in a position where you could add somebody early just to upgrade the kind of that starting talent in the room. I like, Jalen Jones is my guy. I talk about him all the time, but if you get the opportunity to get somebody in the first round or the second round that falls to you that you think could jump in and be an impact starter on day 1, then you take that, because I don't think, as much as I like Jalen Jones, I don't think he's somebody that you stop making other draft plans because of him. And then you're in the situation at nickel where you don't have anybody sitting there behind Kenny Moore, and you really don't know who's going to jump in and play that spot. Sam Womack maybe has the profile of somebody you would bump inside to play nickel, but really has no experience playing the nickel in the NFL. Corey Ballantyne's also in a similar position where all of his cornerback snaps, the few that he's had in his career, have been on the outside. So you really have nobody with any experience in the nickel on the roster right now. So there's definitely room to add. Yeah, if you get somebody kind of later in the draft, maybe that bumps somebody like Corey Ballantyne off the roster. Maybe it even bumps somebody like Juju Brents into some rough territory there if you're adding some rookies. But yeah, I think there's room to add for sure, especially if you're adding top end talent.
Yeah, and Stats Matt says right here, Noah, don't. Jones is going to eat at cornerback too. Don't leave me in that now. So, yeah, I mean, as we've mentioned on the show, Noah and I both have an immense amount of respect for Jalen Jones. 7th rounder, doesn't play like one, doesn't look like he should have been valued at 7th. Almost didn't even get drafted, and he wasn't supposed to make the team. So we'll have to see how Jalen Jones does. But yeah, interesting story on Trey Amos. So he starts off with Louisiana in the Sun Belt Conference for 3 years, goes to Alabama, goes to Ole Miss. Of course, he has the career season with Ole Miss. He has 50 total tackles. He had 39 solo, which, look, for a cornerback, that's pretty freaking good. You'll take that all day. He had a career high of 3 interceptions, but something that really sticks out are his 13 passes defended. Looked great. And he also had an 8.37 RAS score. Now, while that's not out of this world, that's still good enough for the Colts to say, this is an athlete. This is a guy who can get things done. Doesn't have the best vertical, but something that really stood out were his 10-yard, 20-yard, and 40-yard runs. You had 1.53 seconds for the 10. You had 2.57 seconds for the 20. You had 4.43 speed for that 40-yard dash. So if this man gets his hands on the football, there's a good chance he could take it to the house. If he gets a beat on you, he's going to be able to follow you with your routes. But most importantly, it's going to be hard to beat this guy deep. Like, he's got foot speed to keep up with you. He's not like Brents or Jones. He's not going to get lost in a foot race. So that's something to really behold. And something else that really stands out is that he possesses prototypical size for the position at a shade under 6'1", 195 pounds. He tracks the ball well in the air, makes plays, as evidenced by his 3 interceptions and 13 pass breakups, of course. And then he has excellent speed paired with a great 10-yard split and 85th percentile broad jump. That explosive quality shows repeatedly on film. Now, some things that are going to be a little bit worrisome is he's got poor eye discipline. So he doesn't necessarily read the best. Not saying books, I'm saying like an NFL football field for people who are listening, but occasionally betrays him in zone coverage. And his agility and short area quickness are concerning, as he didn't run agilities at the combine, and he occasionally looks like a linear athlete on film, which, for those who want a comparison, some say that Harold Fannin Jr. is a little bit of a linear athlete. But at the end of the day, he brings physicality to the cornerback position. The Colts are sure to love that. While he's not the most explosive cornerback, he will compete with Jalen Jones as a rookie for the starting outside cornerback position opposite of Charvarius Ward. I love the fact that he would be able to compete with Jalen Jones, because Jalen Jones has literally done nothing but compete to get his position. So I think that if you bring that, I think you're going to get a very underrated cornerback competition. We'll have to see. I really, really like that Trey Amos pick right there. Now, this other one, very, very much up in the air. I've had people tell me, this guy's pretty old. This guy's, he's a super athletic guy, but he doesn't necessarily have the production as a cornerback. I don't really care, man. I look at the traits. I look at the guy and what he could potentially bring to this defense. And that's Darian Porter from Iowa State. Darian Porter, I watched him at the combine. Absolute unit. Okay. He's in fact, I'm sorry, I didn't even have it pulled up. I got to pull up his RAS score. So this is the prototypical cornerback that you will see Chris Ballard lose his mind over. Sure, he's older, right? He's like 24, 25. The guy had a 4.30 40-yard dash. He weighs 195 pounds and he's basically 6'2". Okay. He has a 4.04 shuttle, an 8.713 cone. he had a 9.59 rating on his broad jump. Okay, like when you look back at his stats, I do got to go over these because this is where he gets a lot of criticism. Played 6 years at Iowa State, but he was a wide receiver converted to defensive back, which really is interesting because that's going to help him with coverage. But while he only played a limited amount, the guy had 3 interceptions in 2024, really showed his ball skills. And on top of it all, he's just a freak athlete. And first and foremost, this is from the draft guide, he's a space alien level athlete. Who else is a space alien level athlete on the Colts? It's their quarterback. Okay, so while he wasn't a high volume special teams contributor, he was also extremely good at it, especially as a gunner on punt coverage. Right there is a place for him to immediately get some playing time. And he has excellent zone eyes for a player who was basically a 1-year starter. But he's old, no other way around that. He'll need some serious coaching, which is a big one, which is unfortunate for a 24-year-old rookie. That spells potential destruction with Lou Anarumo, because you're talking about he hasn't really done the best with younger players. Now you would get a guy who isn't necessarily young by age, but he is young by his experience level at cornerback. Maybe he comes in and really struggles with Lou's scheme. But at the end of the day, he's a moldable ball of clay. He has the size, strength, athleticism, length that will make the Colts drool. And Chris Hewitt and Jerome Henderson can round out his game into form. If he can put it all together, he has the chance to be an impact player in the secondary. So I could gush all day about this guy. I think that while he doesn't have all the experience in this, there's just so much potential here. If you can get it, you can squeeze that out of him. I think you're going to have one hell of a football player. What are your thoughts on Darian Porter?
Yeah, I think both of these guys are I think it's interesting. These are guys that are pretty much exclusively outside corners and wouldn't be anything on the interior. So we're kind of neglecting that need there at backup nickel that's still on the roster, and kind of going for just kind of an
Maxwell
upgrade.
Hairston. Yeah, there you go.
Just going for an upgrade of what's there already. Kind of hard to tell where Porter's going to be projected to go. Just that huge rise after the combine. Maybe somewhere in the second. I think if the Colts wanted to target him there, would probably be the best chance that they would have at him. You mentioned him being like Trey Amos. You mentioned being a linear athlete, right? And that's not really something that the Colts have shied away from in terms of the cornerback position. Darian Porter, you would maybe think falls into that mold, just being long and running that 4.3 40. You would expect him not to be the best mover, but his agilities were actually he performed really well in the agilities as well. So you know that his change of direction's good. One other thing they both have in common, Trey Amos and Darian Porter, is that ball production, both with 3 interceptions in this past season. And I think that's definitely got to be a key component. I think they're both going to be a little bit better in zone than they are in man, which I think is fine, even with that switch to Lou Anarumo's defense. I think just because Colts fans have been so used to seeing Gus Bradley running his heavy zone, you think that a switch to a new defensive coordinator is going to be so much more man heavy, and it's definitely going to be more man heavy. But they're still going to primarily run zone defense. So if you've got bring in a corner who's got good zone eyes like Darian Porter, Trey Amos, and can make play on the ball when they're facing the quarterback when they throw it, then I think you're adding a good person to your room there. You mentioned being a little bit of an older rookie. I'm not sure that necessarily matters as much this season as it would in past seasons, just because you need the people that can come in and contribute right away. The unfortunate thing there, though, with Darian Porter is even being an older rookie, not a ton of starting experience. And really just this athletic freak who's kind of you mentioned being a moldable ball of clay. I'm not sure that the Colts are necessarily interested in taking on a project that big right now, despite him fitting pretty much word for word, bar for bar, everything that they look for at that position.
Yeah, and look, I think that at the end of the day, it's going to be exactly what you said, and I'm glad you brought that up. Are they really wanting to deal with trying to build a guy when you have Lou Anarumo? Again, Lou is tenured. He's fantastic. He's had a great history in the league, especially with defenses that, like last year, where the talent was really lacking bad outside of Jermaine Pratt and maybe guys like Mike Hilton, but of course Trey Hendrickson. But that is so much for a guy like Darian Porter to take on. I would hope that the Colts believe in him enough, and I would hope that Lou Anarumo thinks that he could do it and mold him. But we'll have to see. I think that you have far more of a realistic pick with Trey Amos. But this next position, this is going to round it out. We actually have three because I couldn't choose between the two that I had. But this is really the zenith of where Louis Anarumo's defense shines. It's where everything kind of comes together. And of course, that's the safety position. Now, before we even get into our picks here, we have to talk about the state of the safety because just like with cornerback, things are way different now.
Mhm.
You have Cam Bynum, who is free safety, but really hasn't been. I mean, the numbers will show 3 interceptions. That's great. But he's more of a run defender. He's more of a guy who's going to make plays in the running attack. Of course, opposite him is Nick Cross, just had a massive career season. But at the end of the day, these are a couple of safeties that really need depth behind them because then you're talking about guys like Marcel Dabo, talking about guys like Rodney Thomas and Daniel Scott, which, by the way, one is from the exchange. I think it's the exchange program, and he hasn't seen really a lick of action in Marcel Dabo. And Daniel Scott hasn't played at all. He's missed his first 2 seasons in the offseason before the preseason even starts. And then Rodney Thomas, while he had kind of a good first year, led the team in picks. Go back and watch some of those games. Some of his interceptions were punt returns. They were such bad throws. Then he turns around and he can't start. He's not even a startable guy. So what's your opinion on the safety position? You got to have depth. And don't shy away. If you think that a guy can turn into a hell of a player, I say don't shy away from possibly a day 2 pick, early one.
Yeah. The safety room is gross. I've just always kind of thought it was gross.
Gross.
Luckily, that's a position, right, where you can go out and find a veteran like 2 weeks before training camp to bring somebody in to compete for that safety 3, safety 4 spot. Yeah, Rodney Thomas is just Rodney Thomas. I'll just say this: a lump. I won't single anybody out. I'll just lump them into a group. Rodney Thomas, Marcel Dabo, Daniel Scott. If they're not on the final 53-man roster, and I won't be surprised about any of them. The only reason I would be surprised right now is because they literally have nobody else. So if you're looking to run some 3 safety sets like Louis Anarumo has liked to employ in the past, then you're really grasping at straws for who to grab here. So I definitely fully expect at least one addition to come in the draft at the safety position, and then probably another veteran in terms of free agency. So yeah, it's a room that is, even with the high end addition of Cam Bynum, it's you need a lot of help there still.
Yeah, and look, at the end of the day, you think about if one of these guys is out for a game or if they need to do multiple sets or some kind of like rotation, oh man, is the talent level just an absolute drop off. But we're going to jump into Noah's first here. Mm-hmm. So this one is, I love this one just because the guy is everywhere. He's like a missile shot out of a cannon, or a missile shot out of like a bazooka, and that's Jonas Sanker. So Zach Hicks is also a huge fan of Jonas Sanker. You can tell if you guys bought the Indie Draft Guide, go read Jonas Sanker's profile. You can tell Zach Hicks really loves him some Sanker. So just dive right into it, man. What are your thoughts on this guy? I can't wait to get into his statistics because the dude is an absolute just energizer. The guy is everywhere on the football field. Everywhere.
Yeah, I'll let you hit the statistics, but just in terms of the impact that Sanker's going to have, this is probably a guy you're picking in late day 2, probably around 3, maybe early day 3 if it comes down to it. But yeah, I think this is a guy who's more of a box safety than a free safety, so maybe he's not necessarily the best complement when you've got Nick Cross, who's pretty much at this point exclusively a box safety, and then Cam Bynum, who can kind of play either or. Jonas Sanker would come in and be that third safety immediately as a guy that could fill in the box. Then, at worst case scenario, I guess it depends who you're asking in terms of. And for Nick Cross, his worst case scenario is he would have to be competing for that spot at strong safety with Jonas Sanker to prove that he can hold that down, both in year 1 and in the future, because Nick Cross is in a contract year, so you have to do a little bit of planning for that as well. But immediately he'll come in, be that safety 3, and give you that flexibility, so you can play those 3 safety sets, assuming all 3 of them stay healthy, and on top of that, be a contributor on special teams. I think he blocked a few kicks in college. He was on core 4, all units and special teams. So he's immediately going to come in and contribute that way. Got that sub 4.5 speed, running somewhere in the 4.4s. So he's got that athleticism to maybe make some plays on the back end of the defense as well.
Yeah, and I mean, so his statistics, I'm just going to go based off of his last two seasons. 107 total tackles. Then he had 98 total tackles. He had 4 tackles for loss in 23, 9 tackles for loss in 2024. Just exciting stuff. And out of his 107 tackles, he had 73 solo. And out of his 98 tackles, he had 65 solo. The guy had 15 passes defended in 2 seasons, 11, by the way, in 2023. And he had 3 forced fumbles alone in 2023, 4 total fumble recoveries in the last 2 seasons. And one of those was a 40, or he returned 2 fumbles in 2024 for 40 total yards. One of them was for a touchdown. So this is a dude that literally will give you pretty much anything you want from him. It's all going to be about if he can actually fit with the NFL. He's probably more of like a 5th round pick. But some of his strengths: he patrols the shallow middle of the field extremely well, quickly diagnosing run or pass and using his football instincts to read the quarterback, putting himself in a position to make plays in both the passing and run game. His 19 career PBUs are a testament to his ability to make plays on the field. And of course, he tested very well at the NFL Combine. Hell of an RAS score, by the way. And his athletic profile suggests there may be a lot of untapped potential in terms of his upside and development. But of course, he is at his best with his eyes on the quarterback, but can struggle to locate the football when turning and running with pass catchers vertically. He can panic with the ball in the air, which may lead to penalties. But here's what I absolutely love is how he fits. Sanker is a dependable tackling machine, and the Colts made a habit last season of missing tackles on the regular, a la why Nick Cross had like 140. His reliability combined with his athletic profile make him an ideal third safety. What did we just talk about? You need more behind Cam Bynum and Nick Cross for this upcoming season. Absolute home run selection, I think, if you get him. I think that with what you're getting him for, I think what you want him to do, I think that this is a really good pick, and I think that you would hit a home run if you get him day 3. So we'll have to see. But these last two, we're going to kind of make them a little bit quicker. Did you have something to say about Sanker?
No, I'm amused that you couldn't pick between these two, so I want to see kind of how you feel about both of them, why you couldn't differentiate between who you wanted to go with here.
Yeah, so both of these guys, full disclosure, I had a really big issue with being able to select between the two. The first one I'm going to get to is Latham Ransom. Okay, so this is the safety from OSU, and what I saw, from the tape, and what I saw was a guy, especially like during the national championship game. I just really feel like there's a lot of, I kind of like what we talked about with Sanker. I feel like there's quite a bit of untapped potential, and I think that whenever you do talk about Latham Ransom, which, by the way, let me edit something here. I just realized we did this a couple times, but I'm a stickler for grammar, so it's actually Latham Ransom, like Noah put here, and I didn't. But yeah, I think that he's a really good potential rotational safety, and I just really like the kind of game that he brings. I will say that there are obviously your downsides, but with what the Colts desperately need right now, I think that this could be a guy that fits. And when you look at his college career, he obviously played 5 years, but he made a lot of his impact in the ground game, and it really stands out in year 5 in 2024. They win the national championship, but he had 76 tackles, career high. 46 for loss, second most in his career, but he had 9 tackles for loss. He had an interception each one of his last 3 seasons. He's got some pass breakups. He had 3 fumbles forced in 2024. So this is a dude that is going to bring the pain when he makes plays. Now, the downside is that you've already got Cam Bynum, who can defend the run. You've already got Nick Cross, who can defend the run. Ransom's going to be definitely more of your run defender. And like Patrick says here, he's a legit elite. He's legit elite in run defense. So if you really, really want to stop the ground attack and you don't want to miss a beat, that's a guy that you pick. Now, I love that he put this here because this is actually, I believe, in the Indy Draft Guide. For some reason, it's not loading. But he has a 15.2% missed tackle rate and a pass defense grade almost half of his run grade. So that's something that you have seen with Cam Bynum. Like if you go look at his PFF grades, Cam Bynum's got a little bit of a disparity between his run and pass grades. What are your thoughts on Latham Ransom? I think that he could be an effective safety. I still think that you might want to go pick up, or dare I say double dip, later on in the draft and get yourself a coverage guy.
Yeah, I think that's one of the, I think you mentioned that untapped potential. I think that untapped potential, you saw he was an elite run defender, like Patrick mentioned there, but I think the untapped potential does come on the coverage side. I think he would be really good matched up with tight ends or some other mismatch options, running backs out of the backfield that you've got on the defensive side of the ball. So I think he could do well in coverage that way in terms of man. I think he does have that ability to be put back there deep. So I would compare him a little bit more to Cam Bynum than I would to Nick Cross as a guy that could play both in that free and that strong safety spot. So yeah, I think in terms of you're talking adding Jonas Sanker there, who I think would mostly be a guy that would work in the box and not really drop deep too much. I think whereas as Ransom is somebody that you could afford to drop deep and at least not tip your hand when he's on the field of the responsibility that he's going to have on the coverage side.
Yeah. I mean, I like what he can offer. I really do. And I also love safeties that can smack the run. I absolutely
Mm-hmm.
love it. I can't stand watching a team just run the crap out of the football. So this last one is without question my pick for safety, and I know that he's a higher pick. I know that it probably takes a day, a round two selection, but I'm going with Xavier Watts from Notre Dame. And the reason I couldn't pick between these two is because one dude brings the absolute pain and knockout punches constantly in the ground game. And then you've got another guy who just absolutely is able to take the football away. You talk about instincts, you talk about just ball hawking ability. Xavier Watts, ladies and gentlemen, in his last two seasons at Notre Dame, 13 interceptions for a total of 273 return yards. He was the Nagurski winner in 2023, which, by the way, is the best defensive player in college football. Okay. Two-time All-American. The guy also had 134 total tackles, 82 for law or 82 solo, 7 for loss. I mean, he had 10 pass breakups in his 2024 season. Look, if you are thinking there's a chance Nick Cross might command huge money, okay, maybe you do get Xavier Watts. Unfortunately, while I would just lose it if they picked him in the best way, by the way, I don't know if he is really going to be in the range for the Colts. We'll see. I think that when they got Cam Bynum, that said a lot about their plans. I think that they wanted a hit the ground running type guy. But man, don't shy away from Xavier Watts. I mean, if they really think that they can get a rotation going with three safeties, and they think that they could use him somehow, some way, maybe in passing sets, because you do kind of have two run defenders as your safeties, I would love it. What are your thoughts? I'm intrigued because it's very likely he's not going to be drafted by the
Yeah.
Colts.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? And it's somebody that I think the Colts would like to add to their room, but maybe not be in the position where they can afford to get somebody who's going to be safety three. I guess it depends on what he would be, right? I mean, maybe he would compete. I think this is a situation where if he comes out and out or proves that he needs to be on the field, I don't even think it would be in direct competition with Nick Cross. I think he would get more of those reps at that free safety position and not strong safety with Cross. So that maybe that's a situation where while Watts is really overperforming in training camp, we need to get him on the field. Maybe that's a situation where you bump Cam Bynum down into the box a little bit more and take Nick Cross off the field and just bring him on for those third safety sets. And you just kind of have your midfielder back there in Xavier Watts to be that guy with the coverage instincts to take the ball away. That's something that we mentioned with both the cornerbacks that we brought up. Obviously, going to be something that Chris Ballard has always emphasized is people that can take the ball away and get turnovers, and that's the epitome of what Watts offered Notre Dame.
Well, and look, there's also I've heard this and I've thought it is that he was so good in college, maybe, just maybe he doesn't even escape the first round. Who knows? If somebody super late in the first round thinks that they really could get a hell of a football player, they need safety, and they can't afford to wait. Because I think the worst case scenario is the dude he's going to probably be gone by the time the Colts selected the second round. So I think if Indy really wanted him, they might have to trade up. I don't see that happening at all. But Xavier Watts, if it's worth anything to anybody, probably my favorite defensive player in the draft. I absolutely Loved watching him, and they beat the brakes off of my alma mater in the tournament. So that's our show, everybody. We really appreciate everyone joining. DSG Goodbar, Chetman, Patrick Rye. Absolutely. Let me see that last comment from Patrick. Yeah, on more. Good Lord, I'm not even going to repeat it. You are you're a freaking menace. Stats Matt. We also had Teresa Willis Johnson, Hustleman Jones, Matthew. If I'm missing anybody, please forgive me. We had so many wonderful people, as always, supporting the show. But you know what? Before we go here, before we kind of wrap it up, what are your thoughts on the Colts defense? Do you think that this is going to be a draft where, let's just say that they have 7 picks? I wouldn't be surprised if 4 or 5 of them are defensive.
Yeah, I think as much as you want to provide immediate help for Anthony Richardson and it what could be his last season to prove himself as the franchise quarterback for the Colts, right? Like, I mean, in terms of proving yourself, I think this is his last chance to do it. Whether or not he does it is a different question. But yeah, you obviously want to help him as much as you can because you want that to work out. You want your quarterback to be in a situation where you feel comfortable and secure in that position moving forward. But yeah, it's just looking pretty much up and down the defense at every position. You're like, we could use maybe a starter here, definitely some depth there. There's just a lot of room to add, especially as much as you've done in the back end. I'm going to emphasize again how much I dislike that safety room. Just kind of banking on Nick Cross to continue, because if Nick Cross doesn't perform up to what he did, then you're in a really tough situation where you have nobody else on the roster that you can even play. And I mean, the offseason's long, and Chris Ballard churns that roster, and he finds some other pieces. So this obviously isn't going to be the room that they're going into training camp with, but I kind of hate where that's at right there. And then at linebacker again, I think you're kind of where you're at right now. You're banking on Jalen Carlisle to be that starter, which I would be okay with. But I think you need an option if it's not working out at some point in the season, and they don't really have that either. So yeah, definitely room to add some depth, definitely room to add some starters. Can really get talent everywhere.
Yeah, and you know what? I don't think that we would be doing our job if I didn't highlight at least one more comment here, because we just talked about it. Outside of tight end, which is a clear starter need, StatsMat said, oddly enough, it's almost all depth need, but also need to be kind of a priority. So we'll have to see. But of course, everybody, again, thank you so much for joining. It's been a pleasure. Don't forget to like the Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook. Go follow Indianapolis Colts on SI, and that is on X. It's at Colts on SI underscore or on underscore SI. Dear Lord, subscribe to Horseshoe Huddle on YouTube and click that bell to turn on the notifications. And of course, if you want to listen to the Horseshoe Huddle podcast, no worries. Go subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever else you listen to your podcast. So on Thursday, we are going to be doing a couple of wild draft scenarios that we feel like could legitimately go down for the Colts. Probably going to be a trade back. I know everyone loves those 2 words with Chris Ballard. But then on Monday, we're just going to lay it all out for you right now. We're going to do our final mock draft, because when we did it pre-free agency, way different than what we're going to do this time. I mean, we didn't even pick a tight end. So people probably were like, what the hell are these guys doing? But then, of course, Thursday, we are going to we'll kind of play it by ear, but I needed to say this because the past 2 years we've done the entire first round and we've been up till about 11:30, 11:45. If me and Noah get a feeling at some point that the Colts are probably good in the first round, we might wrap up the show, but we're going to have probably a couple guests on. It's going to be a little bit of a marathon, but we are so excited. Please, 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 if you find time and you want to join us and talk some football, join the live draft. It's going to be absolutely exciting. I can't wait to see who the Colts select. But until then, everybody, enjoy the rest of your week. We will be seeing you again on Thursday to talk more Colts football and get excited because it's draft time, baby. See you guys soon.